What if I told you that the moment you die in your sleep doesn't feel like death at all? That there's no flash of pain, no gasp for air, no cinematic final heartbeat, just a soft dissolving, a fading whisper into something so gentle, so seamless, that your soul doesn't even notice it's left. You've heard the stories. Someone goes to bed, smiles at their partner, closes their eyes, and never wakes up. No one heard a struggle. No one sensed anything strange. It's called a peaceful passing, but the truth is far more mysterious than peaceful. It's silent, yes, but it's also sacred, otherworldly, and far more orchestrated than you might imagine. Most people assume that death is something violent, something loud or dramatic, or at the very least, something you would notice. But the kind of death that comes in sleep doesn't follow that script. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't knock. It simply slips in. While your body rests in bed, your soul begins a quiet departure. Not suddenly, not with alarm, but as though responding to a familiar pull, like the way a dream draws you deeper without resistance. The body, unaware of what's unfolding, continues its natural rhythm, breathing, resting, restoring, and in that subtle space, the soul begins to unthread itself from the fabric of physical form. You might think death is defined by the moment the heart stops, or the brain ceases to function. But spiritual transitions don't wait for the physical body to finish. They begin long before the final breath. Long before the body knows what's happening, the soul starts its journey inward, or rather, upward. Not in a directional sense, but in vibration, frequency, resonance. Your soul has always been connected to other dimensions through the delicate interface of dreams. And in sleep, that connection is already open. This is why the moment of death during sleep is unlike any other. You are already halfway gone. Think of it like this. During deep sleep, your consciousness naturally withdraws from the physical world. It turns inward, entering the dream realm. You no longer identify with your body in those moments. You become the observer of strange scenes, distant memories, surreal symbols. The logical mind is quiet. The ego is softened. The defenses are asleep. This is why dying during sleep feels nothing like dying while awake. There is no resistance, no fear, no struggle to hold on. The ego doesn't have time to panic, because it's already surrendered. And so the soul, already in a suspended state, simply continues its journey. There's no alarm, no disruption, only continuation. It's like stepping into another room without realizing you left the first one. You keep dreaming, but now the dream changes. Something subtle shifts. You may notice the colors are different. The rules no longer make sense. You might fly, or pass through walls, or see people long gone. But nothing feels threatening. In fact, it might feel lighter, softer, more real than anything you've experienced before. That's the moment, the exact moment, you've crossed over, and you don't even realize it. The physical body, meanwhile, carries on for a short while. The heart may still beat. The chest may still rise and fall, but something is missing, something essential. And unless someone is watching closely, no one knows you've left. It's not that the soul escapes the body, it simply lets go of it. Like fog lifting from a hillside, like a sigh that never returns. The process is gradual, sacred, patient, and because it happens within sleep, it avoids the shock that often comes with traumatic or sudden death. You see, when someone dies while fully conscious, there is usually a moment of recognition, a final awareness, a realization that this is the end. And that awareness can create resistance. The mind grasps for meaning, the ego clings to the known, but in sleep, none of that exists. You're not expecting anything, you're not trying to hold on, you're just resting, and in that state, the soul slips through the veil like water through fingers. This is why so many spiritual traditions regard sleep as a rehearsal for death. Not because it's morbid, but because it teaches the art of surrender. Every night when you sleep, you practice letting go of control. You practice releasing the physical. You practice trusting the unknown. And the more you surrender, the easier the final transition becomes. That's why death during sleep is not a punishment or a mistake. It's often a sign of deep spiritual readiness. A soul that has, in some way, been preparing, consciously or unconsciously, for that level of release. But here's where it becomes even more mysterious. Because the moment of death is not really a moment. It's a process. And when it happens during sleep, that process is extended, softened, stretched like a long, fading dream. The separation between the physical and the spiritual happens in layers. First, the senses begin to shut down. Then the energy that once fueled the physical organs starts to pull inward. And finally, the soul, carried by the momentum of dream travel, crosses a threshold it cannot uncross. There is a moment, unmeasurable by time, when the soul floats above the body, not in shock or confusion, but in stillness, in calm. Some remain in that state for a few minutes, others for hours. Time, in that realm, does not behave the way it does here. You might experience lifetimes of thought and feeling in what would amount to seconds in the physical realm. You may relive a memory, visit someone you love, or stand in silence within a cathedral of light that feels more like home than anything you've ever known. What's most profound is this: during this type of passing, you are not ripped from your body. You are invited out. The body isn't abandoned, it's thanked. You leave with reverence, not fear. And that single difference changes everything. It is the emotional state at the time of death that determines the first stages of the soul's journey. Fear creates distortion, resistance creates confusion. But peace, true, unknowing, unbothered peace, creates clarity. It becomes the foundation for a smooth transition into higher awareness. Most people believe that death is abrupt, but in reality, it is like a symphony coming to its final chord. All the instruments slowing together, all the threads of your life weaving into a final note. And that note echoes through dimensions. If you die in your sleep, you don't hear the final note from the outside. You become it. You are the sound, the music, the echo. And what comes next is not silence, but expansion. You return to the state you came from, the state before birth, the timeless realm that exists beneath the noise of identity. And the strangest part of all, it feels familiar. Almost as if you never truly left. That's the secret no one tells you. Death isn't an end, it's a remembering. And sleep is the door that opens without a sound. What if I told you that every night, as your body slips into sleep, another version of you quietly rises, light as mist, real as breath? This version isn't bound by bones or blood. It isn't limited by time or place. It drifts just inches above your physical form, waiting, watching, exploring. You know this part of you. You felt it every time you've dreamed of flying, of floating, of falling through endless skies without fear. That's not imagination. That's your astral body, the subtle twin that leaves your body each night and returns before you wake. And it's this very part of you that plays the most sacred role when death visits during sleep. You might think that dreaming is just a function of the mind, images firing randomly as the brain resets. But that idea only scratches the surface. In truth, the dream state is not just mental, it's metaphysical. It is the bridge between the worlds, the backstage of reality, a realm where consciousness stretches out beyond the five senses and slips into dimensions that language can't describe. And every night, whether you remember it or not, you enter this in-between place. Not metaphorically, literally. Your consciousness disengages from the body and journeys elsewhere, sometimes far beyond what you'd ever believe was possible. While your body lies still, breathing in its rhythm, the astral body is already in motion. It moves not through space, but through frequency, like changing channels on an invisible radio. And in this state, you're wrapped in a kind of energetic fabric, a layer of soft, protective light, known to ancient mystics as the dream cocoon. It is this cocoon that allows you to explore other dimensions safely during sleep. It shields you from interference, stabilizes your sense of self, and gently guides your return when it's time to wake. But when death arrives during sleep, something very different happens. The cocoon doesn't pull you back, it reorients you. It begins to cradle you in preparation for something greater, a final transition through the astral veil. The astral veil is not a location, it's a threshold. It is the soft, shifting boundary between this physical world and the next layer of existence. Most people pass through it unknowingly every night, only to return before morning. But at the moment of death during sleep, the astral body crosses it completely, without fear, without resistance, without knowing that anything unusual has happened. You don't experience an exit, you experience a continuation. The scenery may change, the rules may shift, but your awareness remains intact. You're still you, only lighter, clearer, unburdened. Because of the dream cocoon, the soul doesn't feel the jolt of departure. There is no tearing, no ripping away. The energetic threads that tie the astral body to the physical one are released with exquisite tenderness, as if the universe itself is conducting a ritual of release. And since your consciousness is already in the dream realm, you simply keep dreaming. But now the dreams are deeper, more vibrant, more alive than anything you've ever known. They aren't dreams anymore, they're doorways. Within this cocoon, your transition is not experienced as a death, but as a deepening. You may feel like you've entered a lucid dream. You may see faces, some familiar, others ancient. You may find yourself in landscapes that defy logic, gardens made of music, skies that pulse with color. But through it all, you feel safe, not lost, not frightened. That's the miracle of the cocoon. It doesn't just protect you, it softens the blow of cosmic memory returning. Because in those first moments after physical death, you begin to remember not just your human life, but your eternal identity, who you were before this life, and what you truly are beneath the masks. This remembering can be overwhelming if the transition is sudden or violent. But when you die in your sleep, the cocoon allows these memories to return gradually, like mist rising from a lake, like morning light filtering through curtains. This is not an accident. It is the design of something far more intelligent than human consciousness, a sacred intelligence that understands how fragile awareness can be when moving between worlds. The cocoon isn't just energy, it's wisdom. It knows how to unfold you without breaking you. And it's not empty, either. Within this space, you may find guides, beings who have always been connected to you but were hidden behind the veil. They don't rush you, they don't demand belief. They simply appear, like dream characters who suddenly begin speaking truth instead of riddles. And you recognize them, not from this life necessarily, but from something older, a bond that was never broken. These guides often communicate not with words, but through thought, color, and resonance. And what they transmit is simple: you are safe, you are transitioning, you are returning. But not everyone recognizes what's happening. Some remain in the dream logic. They think they're still sleeping. They might revisit places from childhood, walk through homes long gone, or wait for someone who never arrives. This isn't confusion, it's part of the unfolding. Just as you don't wake from a dream and instantly remember everything about your life, the soul doesn't always recognize its own release immediately. The cocoon holds it gently in that liminal space until the awareness is ready, and when it is, the veil parts completely, and the soul steps through fully awakened. There's something else to understand. The dream cocoon is not just a transition tool, it is a mirror. It reflects your emotional and spiritual state at the time of death. If you are at peace, the cocoon is luminous, expansive. If you are tangled in fear or attachment, it may become thicker, denser, more symbolic. You may find yourself in repetitive dreams or emotional loops, but even then, the cocoon works with compassion. It doesn't judge, it offers reflection, and with each cycle, it helps the soul shed its layers, like old clothes falling away after a long journey. That's why sleep is sacred, not because it's rest, but because it's practice. Every night, you rehearse for your final return. You practice letting go. You practice remembering who you are without the burden of form. And one night, when the moment is right, the dream doesn't end. The veil doesn't close. The cocoon doesn't return you to the body. It carries you forward, deeper, into truth. This entire process is orchestrated without your conscious control. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to believe in anything. The cocoon doesn't require faith, only surrender. And in that surrender, something extraordinary occurs. You awaken, not from sleep, but from the illusion that life was ever separate from death. You see that the veil wasn't hiding something from you. It was protecting you until you were ready to see. So the next time you fall asleep, remember this: you are stepping across the threshold. Not permanently, not yet, but enough to feel what lies beyond the senses. enough to touch the edges of eternity. Enough to remember, if only for a moment, that you are more than this body. And when your time does come, when sleep becomes the gateway, know that you will be held, guided, and wrapped in something far more beautiful than any dream you've ever had. Something ancient. Something sacred. Something that has always been waiting for your return. What if I told you that the only thing keeping you tethered to this life isn't your heart, it isn't your breath, it isn't your brain? It's a single thread, an invisible filament of energy that connects your body to your soul like a bridge between two worlds. You don't see it, but you've felt it. In every dream you've ever had, in every near-death story whispered through trembling lips, in every moment where you jolted awake feeling like you had fallen, only to find yourself safe in bed, that was the silver cord in action, a sacred tether, an ethereal anchor, a lifeline between matter and spirit. You may think you're purely physical, that your identity is wrapped in skin and bone, but your true self extends far beyond the body. You exist simultaneously in multiple realms, overlapping dimensions layered like veils, and the silver cord is what keeps them aligned. It allows your consciousness to roam freely during sleep and spiritual experiences while ensuring your return. This cord is not symbolic, it is energetic, vibrational, very real. It stretches and contracts with your journeys, expands with your dreams, and always brings you back, until the moment it doesn't. When death comes in sleep, this sacred thread does not break, it does not tear, it dissolves, not all at once, and not with violence. It loosens with a kind of mercy that only the cosmos could design. You don't feel it slipping, you don't notice the moment it lets go. Just like sugar melts in warm water, the cord releases its grip on the body gradually, one thread at a time, one breath at a time. Until there's no more resistance, no more weight pulling you downward, only lightness, only stillness, only the soft recognition that you are no longer bound. In other types of death, sudden, traumatic, or conscious, the cord can snap abruptly, like a rubber band stretched too far. And when that happens, there is often confusion, a shock to the spiritual system, a delay in orientation. The soul may linger around the body or the place of death, still caught in the momentum of fear or attachment, but not so in sleep. In sleep, the cord doesn't snap, it fades. It unwinds as if it was never there. It gives your soul permission to leave without alarm, without disruption, without even knowing that the journey has already begun. This gentle dissolution is why dying in sleep feels so peaceful. It's not because death was easy, it's because the tether that held you here let go with love. It's the difference between falling and floating, between being torn from something and being invited somewhere. The silver cord is a gift, but it is also a teacher. It teaches that your body is not the prison you think it is. It's a temporary home, lovingly connected to your essence, but never your full identity. The moment the cord begins to dissolve, a shift occurs. It's subtle, you might not even notice, but if you could remember that moment, it would feel like being underwater and then rising above the surface into air so still and clear it feels sacred. There is no fear in this transition, because there is no resistance. The cord simply knows its time, and so it lets go. For some, this process begins minutes before the body dies. The breath becomes slower, the mind sinks deeper into unconscious states. The soul begins to rise, not upward in space, but outward in dimension. It begins to prepare for the return, and the cord, sensing this shift, starts to relax its hold. It becomes more translucent, less magnetic, and in the moment of death, it ceases to function, not because it fails, but because it is no longer needed. What happens next is extraordinary, because without the cord, there is no longer a pull to the physical realm, no lingering threads, no elastic snap back into the body. The soul is free to move without boundaries, to cross thresholds without confusion, and it does so with a grace that words cannot fully describe. It's as if you've been holding your breath for lifetimes, and now, finally, you exhale. But what's even more mysterious is that the silver cord has memory. It stores imprints of your lifetime, your energy signature, your lessons, your unresolved emotions. And as it dissolves, it releases that information into the spiritual atmosphere. It doesn't vanish without purpose. It completes a final act of transference. like a bridge collapsing only after the last traveler has crossed. Your journey is recorded not just in your mind or soul, but in the cord itself, and when it fades, the universe receives your life story like a final breath offered back to the stars. Some traditions speak of the cord as a serpent of light, others as a silver thread of divine intelligence. But no matter the image, the truth remains. It is the sacred link between two realms of consciousness. It stretches from the heart center or the solar plexus, depending on one's spiritual structure, and connects to the astral body with exact precision. It's not chaotic, it's not random. It is designed with divine architecture, knowing exactly how much space to allow, how much tension to hold, and when to dissolve without harm. There are rare moments in meditation or near-death experiences where people report seeing the cord. Descriptions vary, but one thing remains consistent: its shimmering, almost liquid appearance, like mercury threaded with light. Some say it hums, others say it pulses, but everyone agrees, it feels alive, not like a rope, but like consciousness itself in thread form. And this is important because it shows that your connection to the physical world is not mechanical, it's intelligent, responsive, aware. So what happens when that intelligence decides it's time to release? Nothing chaotic, no explosion of light, no sudden shift, just a slow, quiet fading of one frequency into another. Your soul, still wrapped in the dream cocoon, now finds itself drifting farther from the body, not away, but beyond. The body, still warm, still holding traces of breath, no longer contains the full presence of you. You've crossed the boundary, and because the cord has dissolved with such elegance, you are not afraid. This dissolution also protects the soul from the trauma of separation. It is a mercy encoded into your spiritual blueprint, and it only activates when certain conditions are met: readiness, peace, karmic alignment, and a specific kind of energetic resonance that only arises in sleep. That's why not everyone dies this way. It's not a matter of luck, it's a matter of energetic grace. The cord responds to your inner state. It releases only when it senses that the release will be received, not resisted. In the end, you don't notice the cord disappearing. You notice the lightness, the stillness, the presence of something familiar yet infinitely vast. You feel the echo of your name, but not your name from this life, your soul name, the one that has no language. And you realize that this wasn't death. This was remembering. This was returning. And when those who are sensitive enough look upon your resting body, they may feel it too. That something has changed. That something has left, not suddenly, but silently. Like mist fading in the morning Sunday, like music echoing one last note before silence, the silver cord has done its work, and in its final act, it gave you the most sacred gift it had to offer: freedom. What if I told you that the most important part of your death doesn't happen when your body takes its final breath, but in the 3 minutes that follow? 3 minutes that stretch into something far greater than time. 3 minutes that unfold like a sacred ceremony just beyond the edge of sleep. If you die while sleeping, your transition doesn't come with panic or struggle. It comes in layers, soft and strange, like waking up inside a dream you didn't know you were having. And in those first 3 minutes, reality bends, boundaries dissolve, and you begin to remember that the veil separating dreams from the afterlife was always paper thin. The body has stopped breathing, yes. The heart has slowed, but within you, something begins to expand. Not the mind as you knew it, with its familiar thoughts and narratives, but something deeper. Consciousness, pure awareness. A subtle shift begins in that space where your dreams once lived. You don't feel like you're dying, you don't even feel like you've left anything behind. What you feel is expansion. Like space inside you is opening. Like the dream is getting bigger, clearer, more meaningful. Colors become more saturated. Sounds feel as if they have shape. Light doesn't just illuminate, it communicates. At first, it may not feel unfamiliar. It may feel like an extension of the dream you were just having. You could be walking through a field from childhood, sitting at a table with someone long gone, hearing music that only existed in your soul. You don't question it because dream logic is still active. In dreams, you never ask why the impossible seems normal. You accept the floating, the shifting, the timelessness. And that's what the first minute is like. an altered state of dream consciousness that begins to blend with something far more vivid, a realm where the rules are no longer governed by memory, but by energy. During this moment, your identity becomes weightless. You still recognize yourself, but not through name or form. It's more like recognizing a song from the inside out. You feel familiar with the essence that is you, but it's no longer attached to the physical identity you left behind. The boundaries that once held you, age, gender, past, even emotion, begin to dissolve like frost under morning Sunday. This isn't forgetting, it's remembering something older, something purer. By the second minute, something else begins to happen. The dream softens, and a new layer emerges. You start to notice presences, not always as figures or faces, sometimes as feelings, frequencies, or even places that seem alive. They don't come to alarm you, they come to receive you. These are not strangers. They are not distant guides in unfamiliar robes. These are the presences your soul has known across lifetimes. They are the ones who whispered in your dreams, who sat in silence beside you during lonely nights, who sent signs you couldn't explain. Now, they're not whispering anymore. They are there, and their presence feels like the purest love you've ever known. You may find that these welcoming energies resemble people from your life, family members who passed on, animals you once cherished, or even places from your dreams that now appear fully alive. But here's the mystery. They don't just exist in this space. They speak your inner language. They know your symbols. They appear not as they were, but as your soul remembers them. This is not coincidence, it's resonance. The spiritual realm adapts to the frequency of your consciousness. It mirrors you, reflects you, and begins to gently lead you forward. There is no rush, no demands, no bright tunnel pulling you at lightning speed. What happens in this space is guided by your vibration, your readiness, your willingness to surrender. That's why these 3 minutes matter so deeply, not because time is ticking, but because your soul is calibrating. It's orienting itself, deciding, in a sense, how to move forward based on how you left, emotionally, energetically, spiritually. If you died in peace, in trust, in surrender, these 3 minutes are luminous. They expand into a timeless unfolding where beauty rises like mist, where love wraps around you like a warm wind. If your soul carried unresolved pain, fear, or resistance, the dream might feel foggy at first. There might be echoes, repetitions, scenes playing in loops. But even then, the loving presences remain. They don't leave, they wait, they gently adjust the environment until you are ready to see more. Because this realm is not about punishment, it is about reflection, and it is patient beyond comprehension. During the 3rd minute, something extraordinary occurs. The veil lifts, not all at once, but just enough for your soul to recognize, this isn't a dream anymore, this is the beyond. And that realization doesn't frighten you, it liberates you. Imagine opening a door in your childhood home, only to find it leads to a world made of light and memory and silence so deep it sings. You don't step through with hesitation, you glide forward as if you've always known this place waited for you. Time, in these moments, is a suggestion. These 3 minutes can stretch into hours, days, even what feels like years from the perspective of soul consciousness. Not because anything is delayed, but because the depth of what happens is too vast to be measured by clocks. You are witnessing your own unfolding, your own return to source, and it unfolds at the exact pace your being needs. In the final part of this sacred window, a subtle review begins, not of events, but of energy. You begin to feel your life from every direction. Not just as the person you were, but as every person you touched. You feel what they felt when you smiled, when you turned away, when you loved them, and when you didn't. But it's not judgment. It's revelation. Not a courtroom, but a mirror made of light. And in that mirror, you are not condemned, you are reminded. Reminded of who you truly are, beneath the forgetting. Some souls, even in this grace, resist. They try to go back, not to the body, it is already cooling, but to the illusion of control, to the comfort of identity. These souls often linger. They float within the edges of the dream realm, still clinging to echoes of who they thought they were. And yet, even here, the welcoming presences remain, still offering, still guiding, waiting for the final sigh of surrender. But for most, the transition completes as quietly as it began. The body may still be warm in the bed. A loved one may have just discovered the stillness, but the soul is no longer there. Not in the way we think. It has passed through the veil. It has completed the most gentle of departures, and in doing so, it has remembered something most people spend their whole lives trying to know: that death is not an ending, not even close. It is a continuation of the dream your soul has always been dreaming, a dream that finally remembered itself as real. And so, the first 3 minutes pass, silently, sacredly, not marked by heartbeats, but by awakenings, not measured in time, but in light. And what remains is not a question of where you are, but who you are now that the veil has lifted. That is the truth they never told you about death in your sleep. It is not sleep that ends, it is illusion. And what begins is the most intimate remembering of all. What if I told you that after you die in your sleep, you might keep dreaming, and not even know you've died at all? That, for some souls, death isn't an awakening but a continuation, a sleep within the sleep, an extended dream that feels so familiar, so comfortable, that there's no reason to question it. You close your eyes one night and drift into your usual dream world. But this time, you don't wake up. Not in your bed, not in your body. Instead, you remain in that dreamlike state, caught in a reality that looks and feels like life, but isn't. A spiritual echo of the physical world, a place that exists just beyond the veil, just beyond the knowing. This phenomenon is not rare. In fact, it's more common than you'd think. When the soul passes during sleep, especially if it's unprepared or unaware, it may simply continue in the frequency it last occupied, meaning the dream state. And because dreams often feel real while we're in them, the soul has no immediate reason to believe anything has changed. The bed might still feel soft, the room may still appear the same. You may still be brushing your teeth, checking your phone, talking to people who feel real, but aren't truly there. This is not a deception, it's not a trap. It's the spiritual dormancy zone, a liminal space between this life and the next, where the soul drifts, suspended in illusion, until it's ready to awaken. Imagine falling into a lucid dream where everything seems slightly off, but nothing alarms you. The light bends in unusual ways, people don't quite finish their sentences, clocks don't move. And yet, it feels normal, safe, even peaceful. This is the texture of the dormancy zone. It is a realm shaped by memory, emotion, and subconscious expectation. And because there is no pain here, no sudden jolt of trauma, the soul doesn't question its environment. It simply carries on, recreating familiar scenarios from the life it just left behind. The mind walks familiar streets, opens familiar doors, greets familiar faces. It doesn't feel like death. It feels like life, just slightly more forgiving, slightly more surreal. This realm can be beautiful, even comforting, but it is not meant to be permanent. It exists to give the soul time to adjust, time to shed its identity gently, time to realize, on its own terms, that it is no longer bound to the world it once knew. But that realization doesn't come quickly for everyone. Some remain in this sleep for what feels like days, others for years, and some, what feels like centuries. Because time here is not linear. It stretches and folds, it loops and curls. A moment can hold 1,000 echoes. A memory can replay until it becomes a reality of its own. The longer a soul stays in this dreamlike state, the more attached it can become to the illusion. And yet, even here, the deeper self, the divine spark within, begins to whisper. Through symbols, through inconsistencies, through subtle clues that something isn't quite right. A conversation may repeat in exactly the same way. A loved one may appear frozen, unable to change expression. A mirror might not reflect anything at all. These moments are not accidents, they are signals, nudges from the higher self, warnings from the soul's eternal memory that it's time to wake up. But waking up isn't always easy, because to awaken from the dormancy zone means accepting a truth many are not ready to face, that they have died, that their life as they knew it has ended. And for some, that truth is too sharp, too final, too frightening. So they roll over, metaphorically speaking, and go back to sleep. They push away the signs. They distract themselves with recreations of daily life. They find comfort in repetition, not because they are evil or lost, but because they are not yet ready to remember. This is not a punishment. The universe does not rush the soul. It waits. The dormancy zone is not a place of suffering, but of mercy. It is a gentle holding space, where awakening happens only when the soul is ready to receive the truth with grace, not fear. And even within this dream realm, help is present. Guides, appearing in the form the soul will most easily accept, slowly enter the narrative. Maybe as an old friend, maybe as a teacher, maybe as a child. They introduce new storylines, strange questions, unexpected symbols. They plant seeds that will grow into awareness. Sometimes, those who are still living dream of the departed, not knowing that they are meeting them in this exact realm. It happens in sleep when both consciousnesses are free. And in those encounters, something powerful can occur. A soul who sees a living loved one in the dormancy zone may feel a shift, a spark, a memory that doesn't belong to the dream. That moment can begin the unraveling. It can start the process of waking, and when that process begins, everything changes. The dream starts to thin, the images lose their solidity, sounds become echoes. Light begins to break through the edges of the illusion. It can feel disorienting at first, like walking through fog that suddenly vanishes to reveal open sky. There may be fear, there may be grief, but there is also awe. Because beneath the dream, the soul begins to feel something it hasn't felt in a long time, the pulse of the divine, the call to continue, the call to remember. And remember, it will, not all at once, but in waves, in flashes, in sudden knowings that cannot be denied. The soul will come to understand that it is no longer tied to the old life, that it is more than the stories it lived, that it has entered a new phase, not of existence, but of expansion. And once that realization settles, the dormancy zone fades, like mist at sunrise, like a song ending in perfect silence. And what lies beyond is not just peace, it is clarity, it is freedom. But the journey through the sleep within the sleep is sacred. It is not something to skip or shame. For many souls, this phase allows the gentlest possible awakening. It offers a way to transition without trauma, to release without force, to remember without shock. And in its own mysterious way, it teaches the soul the most important lesson of all, that the boundary between life and death is not a wall, it is a veil that can be lifted when the soul is ready to see. So if you ever dream of someone who has passed, and they seem lost in a familiar place, walking through a memory, repeating a scene, they may be in this realm. And your presence, even in a dream, may be a whisper of light in their unfolding night. You may be the moment that starts the waking. And if you ever find yourself, one day, drifting in a dream that feels too real, too still, too endless, pause, look around, ask yourself, what am I not remembering? Because the soul always knows, and even in the deepest sleep, truth finds its way in. Eventually the dream ends, and when it does, you don't just wake up, you rise. What if I told you that not every soul wakes up after death? That some continue walking through the world, eyes wide open, yet completely unaware they've crossed the threshold. These are the spiritual sleepwalkers, souls caught in a liminal space, neither fully in the afterlife, nor bound to the physical world, drifting silently through echoes of what once was, replaying old roles, following dreamlike scripts that no longer serve a purpose. They are not lost in a hell or punished for misdeeds. They are simply unaware. And that unawareness creates a kind of spiritual gravity, pulling them into cycles of repetition, illusion, and delay. Death, when it happens in sleep, is meant to be a gentle hand, guiding the soul home. But not all souls are ready to recognize that hand. Some resist, not out of malice, but out of confusion, out of emotional entanglement, out of the sheer disbelief that anything has changed. For these souls, the moment of death passes like a breath they didn't notice. The body lies still, but the awareness clings to a familiar narrative. The dream continues. And so they walk, not as ghosts in the traditional sense, but as sleepwalkers of the soul, navigating a world built of memory and emotion rather than matter. In this state, time unravels. The soul replays scenes from its most emotionally charged moments, sometimes joyful, sometimes tragic, but always incomplete. A mother might continue setting a place at the table for a child who moved away decades ago. A worker may endlessly arrive at a job they no longer have. A man might walk the same block of his childhood neighborhood, searching for something unnamed. They are not hallucinating. They are creating. The afterlife responds to belief and vibration, and these souls are still radiating the belief that they are alive, that there is more to be done, that they must not stop. This is why some homes feel haunted, not by malicious spirits, but by sleepwalkers who are still acting out the emotional echoes of their final days. They might not see the living. They might walk through walls, unaware that the architecture has changed. Their perception is filtered through the lens of unfinished business, of deep-rooted patterns, of attachments that anchor them to the energetic imprint of a place or person. They are not trying to scare anyone. They are not evil. They simply don't know they're dreaming. What makes this liminal state so strange and so tragic is how real it feels to the soul trapped within it. The logic of dreams applies here. Things may loop, shift, or distort, but the underlying belief remains fixed. This is still my life. Even if the surroundings begin to morph, even if the people no longer speak clearly, even if the world grows quiet and surreal, the soul holds on. It keeps performing. It keeps responding to a story that has already ended. Why does this happen? Often it comes down to resistance, not just fear of death, but attachment to life, a desire to control, to fix, to complete. Some souls were deeply identified with their roles: parent, leader, protector, victim, and when death gently arrives, they don't know how to let go of that identity. So they don't. They simply continue, powered by emotional inertia. Others are burdened by guilt, regret, or shame. They don't believe they deserve peace. They expect some form of reckoning, and when none appears, they create their own purgatory, not out of punishment, but out of belief. In other cases, it's grief, not their own, but that of the living. A mother who dies in her sleep might feel her child's pain so strongly that she cannot move forward. A lover, sensing the unresolved sorrow of their partner, may linger in the energetic space between worlds, hoping to send a sign or finish one last message. But the longer they stay in this state, the more the signs fade, the messages blur, the purpose becomes foggy. They forget why they stayed. They forget they even had a choice. And so they drift, not upward, not downward, but around. These sleepwalking souls are not alone. All around them, the spiritual realm is watching, gently nudging, patiently guiding, always waiting. There are moments when cracks appear in the illusion. A strange silence, a mirror that won't reflect, a voice calling their name in a way that makes the dream flicker. These are the whispers of the divine, the subtle attempts to awaken them. Sometimes the soul notices, sometimes it doesn't. But the attempts never stop, because the spiritual realm is merciful. It understands that waking up can take time, especially when the sleep was long and the dream was convincing. Occasionally, a sleepwalking soul meets another soul who has awakened. This can happen in dreams, in energetic overlaps, or through the presence of a living being with heightened spiritual sensitivity. These encounters often feel strange, like déjà vu wrapped in emotion. A stranger might look into their eyes and speak a sentence that pierces the illusion. A dream might include a character who suddenly changes tone, saying, "You don't belong here anymore." These moments plant seeds. They don't always sprout immediately, but they create cracks, and through those cracks, light seeps in. Eventually, something breaks the loop. It might be a memory that no longer fits. It might be the absence of time. It might be a presence that finally reaches them in just the right frequency. And when that moment comes, it isn't terrifying, it's liberating. The realization washes over the soul not as a punishment, but as a deep exhale. The dream was not a prison, it was a cushion. A space held with infinite compassion, giving the soul as much time as it needed to let go without force. And when the soul finally lets go, when the performance ends, when the scene dissolves, when the need to continue the old story fades, a new awareness dawns. The surroundings change. Light pours in, not from above, but from within. The sleepwalker awakens, not to judgment, but to truth, not to an ending, but to expansion. They are received, embraced, reminded. and the question they once resisted, what happens after death, is no longer a question at all. It's an experience, one they now face with eyes wide open, not closed in sleep. So the next time you feel a chill in a quiet room, or sense a presence just beyond your vision, remember this: it might not be something to fear, it might be someone sleepwalking, someone who just hasn't realized they're dreaming. And your awareness, your calm, your compassion, may be the gentle nudge that helps them begin to wake, because death is not the end of awareness, it is the beginning of remembering. And even for those who linger in the in-between, the call to awaken never stops. It waits, patiently, in the silence, ready for the soul to say, I am ready to remember. What if I told you that dying in your sleep is not an accident, that it isn't random, tragic, or arbitrary, but instead, the fulfillment of something long agreed upon, long orchestrated, and precisely timed down to the breath? You may think sleep death is just what happens when the body gives out in the night, a heart gives way, the breath slows, and the person simply doesn't wake up. But beneath that quiet surface lies something far more sacred. There is a rhythm behind the rhythm, a divine timing that few ever glimpse but all are shaped by. The moment of death, especially through sleep, is not just a physical event, it is a spiritual alignment, a karmic conclusion, a soul-level agreement, being fulfilled with flawless precision. From this side of the veil, it may look like fate plays dice with our endings. But from the perspective of the soul, nothing could be further from the truth. The hour of your death is not a roulette wheel, it is a culmination. Before you were born, you agreed to this journey. You chose your lessons, your challenges, your gifts. And within that cosmic blueprint, multiple exit points were etched into the timeline, moments when the soul could choose to leave if certain conditions aligned. Some souls exit through illness, some through sudden loss, others in moments of great change. And then there are the ones who exit in the night, not in chaos, not in pain, but in the quiet embrace of dreams. For these souls, the chosen doorway was sleep, and the timing of that passage is never coincidental. Sleep is the most sacred rehearsal for death. Every night, your consciousness practices release. It lets go of the physical body, detaches from the five senses, drifts into the astral plane, and returns with new dreams, new clarity, and new energy. But for some souls, one night, the practice becomes the performance, the rehearsal becomes the final act, and the return never comes, not because something failed, but because something completed. That night was always marked in the soul's journey, not as a punishment, but as a liberation. The body didn't betray them, it fulfilled its contract. The breath didn't end by accident, it bowed to the rhythm of something higher. Karma plays a role here, not as judgment, but as balance. Souls who have lived many lifetimes of turmoil, violent exits, or unresolved trauma may choose a sleep death as a way to finally exit in peace. It becomes a healing mechanism, a balancing force, a gentle undoing of lifetimes of harsh departure. Others choose it because their soul path requires a soft and unresisting transition, a death that carries no drama, no suffering, no ripple of fear. For these beings, the sleep death is not a lesser death, it is an elevated one. It requires a certain alignment, a readiness that has nothing to do with age or health, and everything to do with energetic closure. Some deaths happen at specific hours because of spiritual numerology and planetary alignments that affect the soul's vibration. There are moments in the night, thin hours between dreams and dawn, where the veil is especially soft, where spiritual gates open more fully, where cosmic tides shift in favor of release. And the soul, deeply attuned to these rhythms, waits for that precise moment. It does not act in haste, it does not miscalculate. When it finally lets go of the body, it is not falling into sleep, it is rising into a long-awaited return, a return that had been charted since before the first breath was taken. Even the people present, or absent, at the time of death, are part of this divine orchestration. A soul may wait until a loved one is asleep, so the departure causes less distress. Another may choose a night when the house is quiet, the energy is still, the timing is perfect for the soul to slip away unnoticed. It may seem, to the ones left behind, like they were stolen in the night, but from the soul's view, it was a gift, a loving choice, a graceful goodbye without needing to be watched, mourned, or held down by the weight of others' sorrow in their final breath. And then there are the souls who leave while dreaming. These deaths are layered with even more mystery, because often, the dream being experienced in that final moment is no ordinary dream. It is a dream of remembrance, of home, of past lives, of soul families. It is not a hallucination, but a signal, a hand reaching out from the other side, welcoming the traveler home. The dream becomes the tunnel, the symbols become the language, and death slips in, not as an end, but as a soft continuation of a deeper journey, already in motion. The beauty of sleep deaths is not just in their gentleness, but in their clarity. The transition is smoother because the soul is already halfway between worlds. It's not ripped out of life, it's led into light. There is no panic, no struggle for breath, no fight with the ego, just a slow unraveling of the tether, a quiet sigh, a release that feels more like surrender than escape. And for souls who have earned or chosen that kind of exit, it is a moment of profound grace. It's easy to see death as something we fear, resist, or avoid. But death, especially through sleep, can be the most sacred ceremony a soul experiences. The body has been a vessel of lessons, movement, expression, but when its time comes to rest, the soul knows, long before the body shows signs, long before the doctors see a change, long before anyone around even notices. The soul begins preparing, it pulls in its energy, it closes the loops, it wraps up the invisible threads that connect it to this world. And then, when all is ready, it exits, not through struggle, but through stillness. This is why some people seem to know they're about to pass. They make final phone calls, they write strange letters, they forgive, they release, they rest more deeply. These are not coincidences, they are soul preparations. And for those who die in their sleep, it often means they were ready long before anyone else was. Not always consciously, but energetically. Spiritually, they knew. And when the hour came, quiet, invisible, in the stillness of night, they followed the script written in the stars. Divine timing doesn't always make sense to the living. We ask, why now? Why like this? But to the soul, the timing is perfect. The moment of sleep death is not a failure of the body, it is the fulfillment of the spirit. It is the bell tolling on a contract fulfilled. And if we could see what the soul sees in that moment, the light, the welcome, the remembering, we would not mourn the quietness of that departure. We would revere it. So if someone you love has passed in their sleep, know this: it was not random, it was not too soon, it was not without meaning, it was sacred, chosen, guided, a transition so peaceful that even the angels whisper more softly during its unfolding. Their soul didn't vanish into the dark, it was lifted into the light, precisely when the universe called their name for the final time. And when your time comes, if your soul chooses sleep as its gateway, may you, too, drift into that sacred exit, wrapped in grace, aligned with the stars, and welcomed home by a silence more beautiful than any sound. What if I told you that when you die in your sleep, you're not alone for even a second? That the moment your final breath fades, a presence arrives. Not loud, not dramatic, but steady, ancient, and deeply aware. These are not the spirit guides you've met in dreams, nor the familiar loved ones who come to greet you later. These are something older, something quieter, the astral gatekeepers, silent sentinels who do not intervene in every death, but only when the passing is soft, free of violence, free of fear. Only when the soul slips out gently, like a whisper leaving the body, they appear, almost imperceptibly, and take their place by the threshold. The astral gatekeepers do not announce themselves. They do not speak, not in the way we understand language. They are not personalities with names or identities. They are function, purpose, harmony and form. Their presence is the presence of order, of protection, of boundary between realms. When a person dies during sleep, especially in peace, it is these beings who oversee the passage, ensuring the soul is neither startled nor lost, neither pulled too quickly nor held too long. They are the unseen caretakers of the moment when the veil parts, and the soul begins to float beyond the limits of flesh. In the moments before death, if you could perceive their arrival, it would feel like the air itself changes. The room becomes still, in a way beyond physical stillness. Time bends slightly. The energy in the space grows dense, but not heavy, dense like a silence that holds all sound within it. That is the gatekeepers establishing their field. They do not guide you with hands or words. They do not offer comfort or wisdom. Their role is more precise, more mathematical than emotional. They stabilize the vibrational shift required for your soul to exit the body without friction. Imagine dying in your sleep. You drift into a dream, your breath softens, your heartbeat slows, and just as the tether begins to dissolve, there they are, without shape, without shadow, but present. They do not touch you, they do not interrupt. They observe, from a dimension just adjacent to yours. Their vibration syncs with your soul's frequency, like two notes resonating in harmony. And in that resonance, something extraordinary happens. Your transition stabilizes. The passageway remains open just long enough, just clear enough, for your soul to pass through without disorientation. This is their task, to guard the opening, to hold the gate. They are not the same as guardians of the living. Spirit guides and ancestral protectors walk with you during life, influencing your choices, sending signs, sometimes intervening. The astral gatekeepers are not concerned with who you were or what you believed. Their only task is the transition itself. They are drawn to the frequency of peaceful exits, to the soul that has accepted its time, to the energy field that is already releasing its attachments. In these moments, the gatekeepers arrive, not summoned, but activated by alignment. Their appearance is not a reward, nor a guarantee. It is a response to the soul's vibration, a frequency match. Many who have returned from near-death experiences speak of presences that stood silently nearby, figures made of light, or shadows with clarity, or just a profound awareness that someone or something was there, watching, anchoring the space. These are echoes of the gatekeepers. They do not usually accompany souls who leave in trauma or violence, because those deaths require different forms of intervention, more emotional, more complex. But when the death is soft, when the soul is already halfway to the other side, they arrive in quiet coordination with the laws that govern dimensional crossings. You may wonder where they come from, or what they look like. The truth is, they are not entities in the way we understand beings. They are more like intelligences wrapped in energetic forms. Some appear as columns of light, others as symmetrical geometric fields that shimmer like stars collapsing inward. Some do not appear at all, but are felt, like the low hum of sacred music vibrating through the bones of the world. They are beyond human form, they are beyond personality, they are structure. And yet, they are deeply attuned to the soul's sensitivity in its most vulnerable moment. One might think such a presence would feel cold or sterile. But that's not the case. Their energy is neutral, yes, but not indifferent. It is the kind of neutrality that offers safety, that ensures no distortion, no bias, no interference, just clarity, like the silence in a sacred temple before a prayer is spoken, like the stillness of a forest before the dawn. It is in this stillness that the soul recognizes its path, not because the gatekeepers point the way, but because their presence ensures there are no shadows hiding the door. And what if a soul hesitates? What if the final breath is released, but the spirit clings, unsure, unready? The gatekeepers do not force, they do not persuade, they simply hold the opening. They maintain the space for as long as it is needed, within the bounds of natural law. They offer a window, not a push. If the soul resists completely, other forces may be called in. Guides, ancestors, beings of comfort. But the gatekeepers will have done their part. They will have created the perfect moment of passage, should the soul choose to take it. In many ways, their existence speaks to a deeper truth, that death is not chaos, and the afterlife is not guesswork. There is order in the unseen. There are roles and rhythms and laws as intricate as any ecosystem here on Earth. The gatekeepers are part of that cosmic order. They ensure that when a soul departs in sleep, it does so through a gateway that is clean, clear, and protected. They prevent interference. They maintain dimensional integrity, and in doing so, they allow the soul to transition without fragmentation. Some believe that moments before a sleep death, if one is sensitive enough, they can sense a shift in the room, a cooling of the air, a sudden feeling of being watched, but not with fear, with presence. These are often the earliest signs of the gatekeepers establishing themselves. And even if no one notices, even if the room is dark and quiet and ordinary, the sacred geometry of transition is unfolding. Not visible to the eye, but felt by the soul. And when the moment comes, the gate opens. Not like a door swinging wide, but like a curtain of light gently parting. And then the soul moves, not rushed, not dragged, just released. To know that these beings exist is not just a comfort, it is a reminder. A reminder that the universe takes death seriously, that even in the quietest moments, perhaps especially in those moments, there is great attention, great structure, great care. You may die in a room with no one by your side, no family awake, no voices to send you off, but you will not be alone. The gatekeepers will be there, silent, unseen, watching over the most sacred transition your soul has made in lifetimes. And when your energy crosses the threshold, they will not follow. They will simply withdraw, like mist returning to sky, like echoes returning to silence. Their task complete. So the next time you wonder if death in sleep is empty, or lonely, or forgotten, remember this. There are intelligences waiting on the other side of silence, guardians of the threshold. Not to hold your hand, but to hold the gate. And that, in its own way, is a love too deep for words. What if I told you that the dead never really stop speaking to you, they just change their language? And what if that language is one you've always known, even if you don't remember learning it? The moment a soul crosses over, especially in sleep, the way it communicates dissolves into something far more subtle than words, something that slips past logic and lands directly in your inner knowing. It is the language of dreams, the language of symbols, the soft yet powerful communication that speaks not to your ears, but to your soul. This is how the dead speak once they've moved beyond the body, and it is why so many of them come to you while you sleep. The dreamscape becomes their voice, not by chance, but by design. When a soul dies in sleep, its transition is gentle, and often it moves into a realm that closely mirrors the astral planes we pass through during our nightly dreaming. These souls become fluent in symbolic language almost immediately. They don't need to learn it, it's remembered, because it's the same symbolic frequency they used while incarnated during every night of rest, every lucid dream, every spiritual visitation. This fluency gives them a unique ability to weave themselves into your dream world, not as intruders, but as messengers. Not to haunt, but to awaken. Dreams after death aren't like ordinary dreams. They don't follow storylines designed by the mind. They follow vibrations. A soul doesn't say words in the way we're used to. It becomes an image, a feeling, a color, a metaphor. A loved one who passed may not walk up to you and say, "I'm okay." Instead, they might appear as a bird soaring through an open window, or as a child handing you a key, or even as a flickering light in a place you've never been before. And yet, somehow, you know what they mean. Because dream language is decoded by resonance, not by grammar. You feel the meaning before your mind can wrap around it. This is why visitations from the dead feel different than normal dreams. They leave a weight in your chest, a stillness in your body, a vibration that lingers long after you open your eyes. You don't remember the details clearly, but you remember the essence. You remember how you felt. That is the message. That is the point. The dead do not need you to understand them intellectually, they need you to receive them energetically. And sleep is the only time most people open up enough to allow that exchange to happen without resistance. Why don't they just speak to you while you're awake? Why not appear in the room or leave signs in the light of day? The truth is, they try. But the waking mind is noisy, analytical, skeptical. It dismisses too easily. It filters too harshly. But in dreams, those filters dissolve. You're more receptive, more open, more aligned with the same frequency they now live on. That's why they choose sleep. Not because it's the only way, but because it's the clearest path between your world and theirs. And if you've ever dreamed of someone who passed, especially someone who died in their sleep, it's likely that wasn't just a dream. It was a conversation, wrapped in symbols, sent through the veil. But what are they trying to say? Sometimes, it's reassurance. I made it. I'm not in pain. I remember everything now. Other times, it's guidance. They may offer warnings, glimpses of possible futures, or emotional healing that you didn't know you needed. But they never force, they never pressure. Dream communication from the dead is always an invitation, an offering. You are free to accept or ignore it. But if you pay attention, if you truly listen, you'll notice the symbols repeat, the dreams become clearer, and the messages deepen. You might see them in strange places, a park from childhood, a house that never existed, a landscape made of starlight and water. These are not random. They are carefully chosen metaphors, designed by the soul and your subconscious working together. A hospital hallway might mean unresolved pain. A train leaving a station could symbolize transition. Rain could be a cleansing. Fire could be a warning. None of this is accidental. Your soul understands what these images mean. Even if your waking mind struggles, your inner self knows. And when the dead visit you, they use the language you already speak beneath your thoughts. It's important to note that not all dream visits from the dead are comforting. Sometimes they stir unease. Sometimes they bring up wounds you thought were healed. This isn't to harm you. It's to move something within you, to unlock a truth, to open a space for healing. A soul who appears distressed in a dream may not be in pain. They may be reflecting your own unprocessed emotions, offering you a mirror to face what was never spoken. A soul who appears silent might not be ignoring you. They might be communicating through their stillness, showing you the power of presence beyond words. And yet, there are moments when the message is unmistakable. You might hear your name spoken with a clarity that jolts you awake. You might be handed an object in the dream, a letter, a photograph, a piece of jewelry, and feel a surge of emotion so deep it takes days to fade. These are direct transmissions, gifts from the other side. They carry energy, they carry healing, and they often arrive exactly when you need them, even if you don't realize it until much later. Souls who die in their sleep seem to have a special ability to navigate these dream worlds. Their transition was already gentle, their consciousness already aligned with the astral layers. So when they reach out, they don't stumble, they glide. They move through your dreams with precision, not because they are more enlightened, but because their death allowed for a smoother integration with the symbolic layers of existence. They remember how to speak dream. And they use that skill to stay connected, to continue the dialogue, to remind you that love does not end when breath does. So what can you do? How do you receive these messages more clearly? It begins with presence. Keep a dream journal by your bed. Write down even the fragments. Pay attention to symbols that repeat: animals, numbers, places, weather. Notice the emotional texture. Was it peaceful, chaotic, nostalgic? All of this is part of the language. And most importantly, open yourself to the possibility that what you call just a dream may be something far more sacred. A transmission, a visit, a moment of contact with someone who now lives just beyond the veil. There is no need to fear these dreams. They are not hauntings. They are love letters sent in the only language the soul can still speak. And if you listen, truly listen, not with your ears, but with your inner knowing, you'll realize something incredible. They never really left. They just changed the way they speak. And in your sleep, in your silence, in your surrender, they return. Not as shadows, but as symbols. Not as memories, but as messengers. Still guiding, still loving, still speaking in the oldest language your soul has ever known. What if I told you that when you die in your sleep, your life doesn't flash before your eyes like a movie reel in fast forward? Instead, it unfolds slowly, softly, like petals opening in a timeless garden. There is no blinding light or cosmic interrogation. There is no harsh judgment or overwhelming rush. The life review that follows a sleep death is different, quieter, deeper, and far more symbolic than literal. It does not confront you with what you did wrong, nor does it force you to relive pain all at once. It comes in waves, in whispers, in the language of dreams. You don't wake up on the other side to a booming voice listing your failures and virtues. You awaken into a subtle unfolding, one that has already begun, sometimes even before your final breath. Because death in sleep allows for a smoother transition, the review begins gently, gradually. It moves with the pace of your own readiness. At first, it may feel like dreaming. You find yourself in familiar places, old homes, childhood bedrooms, cafes you haven't visited in decades. These aren't memories randomly stitched together by your mind. They are chosen, designed, activated by your own spirit to begin reflecting who you were, what you learned, what you still carry. But instead of watching your life like a detached observer, you feel it, you walk through it. You become the memory again, but with deeper awareness. You're no longer trapped in the moment as it once was. You now view it from all angles. You feel not only your own emotions, but the emotions of those you affected. A word you spoke in anger, a kindness you forgot you gave, a silence that healed or hurt, all of it rises again, not to punish you, but to complete its energetic cycle. The life review after a peaceful death is not a court of law. It is a mirror made of dreams. The pace is slow on purpose. The soul, unburdened by trauma or sudden rupture, is allowed to integrate gently. You're not bombarded with images. You're guided, sometimes by subtle presences, sometimes by your higher self. You are shown scenes not in order of time, but in order of resonance. Moments that shaped you, choices that defined you. The review isn't about everything you did, it's about everything you became. And what you're shown is selected by your soul's deeper knowing, not by ego, not by shame, but by the lessons still unfolding. Some of these scenes may come to you as allegory. You might walk through a dream version of your life where events are rearranged, dramatized, or surreal. You might see yourself planting seeds that become people, speaking words that turn into birds, walking roads paved with decisions you forgot you even made. This isn't fantasy, this is soul, language. Symbolic storytelling that bypasses the mind and speaks directly to your evolution. You may find yourself laughing, crying, or watching in awe, not because of what you're seeing, but because of what you're remembering. Your life was not a list of events, it was a vibration. And now you get to feel that vibration in full. If there is regret, it comes not as punishment, but as realization. You may revisit a scene where you ignored someone's pain, but instead of being scolded, you feel their silence. You understand it from the inside. And through that, healing begins, not just for you, but for them, too. Because in the afterlife, emotional energy is not bound to time. What is realized now ripples backward and forward, and in this way, your life review becomes a healing process, not just a reflective one. It stitches wounds you didn't even know were open. It softens parts of you that were hardened by the noise of survival. And just as there are scenes of pain, there are also scenes of joy. You will relive the moments you laughed so hard your stomach hurt, the times you danced alone with no one watching, the warmth of someone's hand in yours, under starlight. These are not just memories, they are energetic truths that now shine even brighter, because there is no fear dulling them. You will feel the love you gave and received in ways that transcend memory. It will flood through you like sunlight through a stained glass window, colorful, warm, sacred. The beauty of this kind of life review is that it requires no defense. You're not being asked to justify yourself. You're being invited to remember, and in remembering, to evolve. There is no hierarchy here. No scoreboard. Just understanding, compassion, expansion. Even the darkest parts of your life are met with a sense of, now I see. And that seeing, pure, humble, honest, is what transforms the soul. You do not need to be perfect to move forward. You only need to see clearly, to integrate, to release, because the life review is dreamlike. Time itself bends. What feels like minutes could be days. What feels like hours may be lifetimes. You are not being rushed through a checklist. You are being held in a space that allows for the full unfoldment of your being. The review continues until you are complete with it, not when someone else says you're done. And when you finally emerge from it, you do so lighter, more whole. Not because you erased what happened, but because you finally understood it. Some souls stay in this phase longer than others. Not because they're punished, but because they are immersed in the beauty of their own becoming. They walk the hallways of memory like temples. They sit with moments like sacred texts, and when they are ready, truly ready, they rise from the dream with a clarity that cannot be given, only earned. They are no longer the version of themselves that died, they are something more. Something that remembers everything without being bound by it. For those still living, this understanding brings peace. If your loved one passed in their sleep, know that they are not caught in darkness. They are not lost. They are walking the soft corridors of memory, receiving the truth of their life in ways they never could while burdened by the density of the world. They are not being judged, they are being shown, and through that showing, they are healing, expanding, returning to their truest form. And one day, when your time comes, if your soul chooses the quiet path, the sleep death, you too will walk this dream, not as punishment, but as a gift. You will meet yourself again, in all your layers, and you will weep, laugh, ache, and glow, as your life reveals itself, not as a series of mistakes and triumphs, but as a masterpiece of evolution. One that was never random, one that made more sense than you ever realized. One that leads, not to an end, but to a beginning. A gentle beginning, born from a gentle ending, whispered through the dream that never truly stopped. What if I told you that when you die in your sleep, your life doesn't flash before your eyes like a movie reel in fast forward? Instead, it unfolds slowly, softly, like petals opening in a timeless garden. There is no blinding light or cosmic interrogation. There is no harsh judgment or overwhelming rush. The life review that follows a sleep death is different, quieter, deeper, and far more symbolic than literal. It does not confront you with what you did wrong, nor does it force you to relive pain all at once. It comes in waves, in whispers, in the language of dreams. You don't wake up on the other side to a booming voice listing your failures and virtues. You awaken into a subtle unfolding, one that has already begun, sometimes even before your final breath. Because death in sleep allows for a smoother transition, the review begins gently, gradually. It moves with the pace of your own readiness. At first, it may feel like dreaming. You find yourself in familiar places, old homes, childhood bedrooms, cafes you haven't visited in decades. These aren't memories randomly stitched together by your mind. They are chosen, designed, activated by your own spirit to begin reflecting who you were, what you learned, what you still carry. But instead of watching your life like a detached observer, you feel it, you walk through it. You become the memory again, but with deeper awareness. You're no longer trapped in the moment as it once was. You now view it from all angles. You feel not only your own emotions, but the emotions of those you affected. A word you spoke in anger, a kindness you forgot you gave, a silence that healed or hurt, all of it rises again, not to punish you, but to complete its energetic cycle. The life review after a peaceful death is not a court of law. It is a mirror made of dreams. The pace is slow on purpose. The soul, unburdened by trauma or sudden rupture, is allowed to integrate gently. You're not bombarded with images. You're guided, sometimes by subtle presences, sometimes by your higher self. You are shown scenes not in order of time, but in order of resonance. Moments that shaped you, choices that defined you. The review isn't about everything you did, it's about everything you became, and what you're shown is selected by your soul's deeper knowing, not by ego, not by shame, but by the lessons still unfolding. Some of these scenes may come to you as allegory. You might walk through a dream version of your life where events are rearranged, dramatized, or surreal. You might see yourself planting seeds that become people, speaking words that turn into birds, walking roads paved with decisions you forgot you even made. This isn't fantasy, this is soul language, symbolic storytelling that bypasses the mind and speaks directly to your evolution. You may find yourself laughing, crying, or watching in awe, not because of what you're seeing, but because of what you're remembering. Your life was not a list of events, it was a vibration, and now you get to feel that vibration in full. If there is regret, it comes not as punishment, but as realization. You may revisit a scene where you ignored someone's pain, but instead of being scolded, you feel their silence. You understand it from the inside, and through that, healing begins, not just for you, but for them, too. Because in the afterlife, emotional energy is not bound to time. What is realized now ripples backward and forward. And in this way, your life review becomes a healing process, not just a reflective one. It stitches wounds you didn't even know were open. It softens parts of you that were hardened by the noise of survival. And just as there are scenes of pain, there are also scenes of joy. You will relive the moments you laughed so hard your stomach hurt, the times you danced alone with no one watching, the warmth of someone's hand in yours under starlight. These are not just memories, they are energetic truths that now shine even brighter, because there is no fear dulling them. You will feel the love you gave and received in ways that transcend memory. It will flood through you like sunlight through a stained glass window, colorful, warm, sacred. The beauty of this kind of life review is that it requires no defense. You're not being asked to justify yourself. You're being invited to remember, and in remembering, to evolve. There is no hierarchy here. No scoreboard, just understanding, compassion, expansion. Even the darkest parts of your life are met with a sense of, now, I see. And that seeing, pure, humble, honest, is what transforms the soul. You do not need to be perfect to move forward, you only need to see clearly, to integrate, to release. Because the life review is dreamlike, time itself bends. What feels like minutes could be days. What feels like hours may be lifetimes. You are not being rushed through a checklist. You are being held in a space that allows for the full unfoldment of your being. The review continues until you are complete with it, not when someone else says you're done. And when you finally emerge from it, you do so lighter, more whole. Not because you erased what happened, but because you finally understood it. Some souls stay in this phase longer than others, not because they're punished, but because they are immersed in the beauty of their own becoming. They walk the hallways of memory like temples. They sit with moments like sacred texts. And when they are ready, truly ready, they rise from the dream with a clarity that cannot be given, only earned. They are no longer the version of themselves that died. They are something more, something that remembers everything without being bound by it. For those still living, this understanding brings peace. If your loved one passed in their sleep, know that they are not caught in darkness. They are not lost. They are walking the soft corridors of memory, receiving the truth of their life in ways they never could while burdened by the density of the world. They are not being judged, they are being shown, and through that showing, they are healing, expanding, returning to their truest form. And one day, when your time comes, if your soul chooses the quiet path, the sleep death, you too will walk this dream, not as punishment, but as a gift. You will meet yourself again, in all your layers, and you will weep, laugh, ache, and glow, as your life reveals itself not as a series of mistakes and triumphs, but as a masterpiece of evolution. One that was never random, one that made more sense than you ever realized, one that leads, not to an end, but to a gentle beginning, born from a gentle ending, whispered through the dream that never truly stopped. What if I told you that not every peaceful death is truly peaceful for the soul? That dying in your sleep, though gentle in appearance, can sometimes be the most disorienting exit of all. We often romanticize the idea of dying quietly in the night, the body relaxed, the breath fading into silence, the soul lifting effortlessly. To the living, it looks merciful, an escape free from pain or panic. But beyond the veil, there is another reality. One where the transition, though smooth, is so subtle that the soul doesn't always realize it has happened. The doorway looks too much like a dream. The passage is too quiet. And in that quiet, something dangerous can unfold. Confusion, delay, or even spiritual limbo. When someone dies in their sleep, there's no jolt of trauma to snap the soul into awareness. There is no rupture, no violent event to mark the moment of separation. Instead, the soul often drifts from the dream body to the spirit body, without knowing anything has changed. They may awaken thinking they're still alive, still dreaming, still somewhere in the in-between. And because dreams are already fragmented, symbolic, and non-linear, many souls remain trapped in a loop of their final mental state. Not because they're being punished, but because they're still clinging to a reality that no longer exists. It begins with subtle dissonance. The soul walks through a familiar house, but something feels off. The light bends strangely. The walls don't hold sound. They try to talk to people who don't respond. They try to open doors that no longer lead anywhere, and still, they don't fully realize they've died. Why would they? Their passing was so soft, so uneventful, that no dramatic shift occurred. They simply continued. And for some, this continuity becomes the trap. The dream reality they last occupied becomes a kind of self-made purgatory, a place where their own unawareness builds the walls around them. This is especially common for souls deeply attached to their identities. If someone was overly bound to their name, their role, their possessions, or even their beliefs about what death should look like, they may resist the truth. The mind tries to preserve the illusion because the ego is still active, even if the body is not, and so the dreamscape becomes their safe house, not because it's real, but because it's familiar. The gentle death becomes a lullaby that never ends, and the soul rocks itself to sleep in a reality that was only meant to be a hallway, not a home. You might imagine this as peaceful, but in time, it becomes deeply disorienting. Days, months, even years can pass without the soul realizing it has stopped growing. The symbolic surroundings start to degrade. People in the dream become less responsive. The environment becomes static. That's when the soul begins to feel the pull, the whisper from higher dimensions calling it to awaken. But even then, not all respond. Some cling harder, especially those with unresolved fears about judgment or letting go. Ironically, the very thing they feared most about death, losing control, losing self, losing meaning, is exactly what the dreamscape allows them to avoid. At least, for a while. The most dangerous part of a peaceful passing is the illusion of completion. To the soul who quietly exits in sleep, it can feel like there's nothing more to do, no trauma, no pain, no reckoning. But that isn't always true. Peaceful doesn't mean finished, it doesn't mean evolved. A soft death doesn't guarantee a smooth awakening. And in fact, the gentler the transition, the easier it is for the soul to become enamored with the dream, to choose comfort over consciousness, to linger instead of ascend. Some souls become wanderers, walking astral streets that resemble Earth, replaying habits, roles, even jobs they used to do. They enter a spiritual sleepwalking state. They might feel a vague sense that something is off, but they dismiss it, choosing to interpret the signs as part of a dream or a vision. In some cases, they even create full realities around themselves, imagined heavens or symbolic rooms filled with trophies, memories, or idealized scenes. These are not eternal punishments. They are self-constructed bubbles, designed by the part of the soul that isn't ready to release control. The bubble protects, but it also imprisons. Eventually, something cracks through. A disturbance in the dream, a flicker of unfamiliar light, the presence of a being who does not fit the dream's logic. Sometimes it's a guide. Sometimes it's the voice of a loved one still alive, calling out in a dream from the earth plane. Sometimes it's just silence, deep, unfamiliar, undeniable silence. That's when the soul begins to question, to pause, to open to the possibility that what feels real is, in fact, a placeholder. And in that moment, the dream dissolves, and the soul awakens to a deeper truth. But not all souls get there on their own. Some require help. Rituals from the living, prayers, candle ceremonies, intentions sent with love, can act like spiritual beacons. They pierce the fog of the dream and remind the wandering soul that they are missed, remembered, and ready to rise. It doesn't take much, a whispered message, a name spoken with reverence. Even tears, when shed with intention, can become rivers that carry the soul forward. Love always travels between worlds, and when it is directed with clarity, it becomes a compass for those who have lost their way in sleep. So while peaceful passing is often seen as the most desirable way to go, it is not without its risks. The absence of pain does not guarantee presence. The softness of the exit does not ensure awareness. And for those who are too attached to their roles, their comforts, or even their dreams, death in sleep can become a kind of spiritual stasis, not a punishment, not a trap, but a pause that can stretch longer than the soul ever intended. This is why awareness in life matters. How you relate to sleep reflects how you will relate to death. If you treat dreams as throwaway nonsense, you may ignore the signs your soul is giving you. If you use sleep only to escape, you may miss the lessons waiting in the silence. But if you treat your dream life as sacred, if you listen to the symbols, embrace stillness, and practice letting go, you begin preparing for death in a way that ensures you will not be fooled by the softness of your passing. You will wake up, even if you die in sleep. And if you've ever lost someone who passed in their sleep, understand this: they may still be close. not because they're trapped, but because they're integrating. Their dream may not have ended yet. But that doesn't mean they're suffering, it means they're in the space between, the cocoon before the flight. And your love, your memory, your silent conversations, they matter, they help, they echo into the dream, reminding them that they are more than the story they've been replaying, that something greater is waiting. So let us not mythologize peaceful death without also acknowledging its complexity. It is not better or worse than any other path, it is simply different, mysterious, potent, and sometimes filled with shadows disguised as comfort. Death in sleep is not the end of the journey, it's the soft turning of a page. And whether the soul keeps reading or lingers too long on the same chapter depends on one thing: the willingness to wake up, even after the final dream has begun to fade. What if I told you that your thoughts could reach beyond the veil, that even now, even long after someone you love has passed in their sleep, the energy you carry, your grief, your longing, your memories, still touches them? We often think of death as a closing door, a silent goodbye. But in truth, the connection between you and the departed doesn't end with their final breath. Especially when that passing is quiet, dreamlike, and subtle, your presence in their life story remains like an echo in the chambers of their soul. What you feel, they feel. What you hold on to, they must navigate. The journey of the departed isn't theirs alone, it's entangled with the energy of the living. When someone dies in their sleep, the transition is delicate. The soul, no longer anchored by the body, begins to drift, first into the dream realms, then toward deeper planes of awareness. But this journey requires space, it requires clarity, and sometimes that clarity is blurred by the emotions of those left behind. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because love is powerful. And when that love is mixed with guilt, regret, or intense mourning, it can tether the soul to the world it's trying to release. You may not realize it, but your emotional field acts like a signal tower. Your grief emits frequencies. Your thoughts become invitations. Every time you replay a moment, every time you whisper their name in the dark or ask, "Why did you leave?" you're sending a message. And the soul, especially in its early stages of transition, can hear that message. If they were emotionally bonded to you in life, they may feel compelled to respond. But to do so, they must pause their movement forward. They must stay closer to the threshold between worlds, hovering between what was and what is trying to become. This isn't inherently bad. Sometimes, that pause becomes a sacred space, a final moment of shared energy, a way for both of you to say what was left unsaid. But if it lingers too long, if your sorrow becomes a daily anchor, if your obsession pulls them into your dreams again and again, it can delay their healing. Not because you are selfish, but because you are unaware of your power. You don't realize how deeply the soul still feels you. You don't realize that they are watching, waiting, hoping you'll understand that letting go doesn't mean forgetting, it means freeing both of you. It's not just emotions that bind, it's memory, photographs held too tightly, rooms kept frozen in time, unresolved questions repeated like mantras. Did they suffer? Are they alone? Could I have saved them? These thoughts form energetic webs. The soul, especially if they passed in their sleep and are still navigating the soft layers of their transition, can become entangled. They may try to reach back, to comfort you. They may appear in your dreams not as visitors, but as mirrors, reflecting the very emotions you haven't allowed yourself to feel. Not every dream visitation is a message. Sometimes, it's a response to your unresolved energy, a call for balance, a gentle nudge to release. And yet, the living are not powerless. In fact, they hold one of the most sacred roles in the entire death journey. You are not just mourners, you are anchors, you are gatekeepers in your own right. Through ritual, intention, prayer, and conscious release, you can become bridges. You can help the soul complete what it came to do. You can give it permission to go deeper, to go higher, to return to source without guilt or hesitation. It begins with awareness. Ask yourself, what am I still carrying? What emotions am I projecting onto the one who has passed? Is my grief clean, or is it tangled with shame, with blame, with disbelief? These emotions are not wrong, but they are powerful. The more conscious you become of what you're transmitting, the more you can refine it. Turn mourning into honoring. Turn longing into blessing. Speak aloud to them, but not in desperation. Speak with trust, with love that expands, instead of contracts. Tell them it's okay to continue, that you'll be okay too, and mean it. If you're still dreaming of them often, take note. Are they speaking clearly, or remaining silent? Do they appear joyful, or stuck? The tone of their presence in your dreams often mirrors your own inner state. If they seem distressed, ask yourself what emotion you haven't fully processed. If they appear again and again in looping scenarios, consider what cycles within you remain unbroken. These aren't signs that they are suffering eternally. These are reflections, opportunities for both of you to evolve. Rituals help. Not because they force anything, but because they focus energy. Lighting a candle and saying, "I release you with love," can send ripples through the veil. Creating an altar or writing them a letter can bring clarity to your own heart, which in turn eases theirs. Remember, the soul does not need fixing, it needs space. And space is created when the living allow their hearts to soften, to expand beyond pain, to trust that love does not require possession. Sometimes, those who die in their sleep remain near because they are worried about you, especially if they were caretakers in life. They may hover, checking in, delaying their own journey to ensure your healing. But that delay, however noble, can weigh them down over time. The best way to honor their love is to embody what they wanted for you: peace, joy, continuation. You become the proof that their life mattered. And when you begin to thrive again, not in spite of their absence, but because of the love they left behind, they feel it. And that feeling becomes a bridge, guiding them home. You might feel guilty for moving on, for smiling, for laughing again. But don't. Your healing is their freedom. Every joyful breath you take sends a message through the dimensions: I remember you with love, not pain. And that message becomes a beam of light in their reality. It tells them they completed their task. It tells them their story lives on in beauty, not just in loss. This is the hidden role of the living: to be the final blessing, to be the gentle wind at the soul's back, whispering, "Fly." So yes, the journey of the soul after a peaceful passing is delicate, and yes, your energy matters more than you know, but this is not a burden, it is a sacred trust. You are not alone in your grief, and they are not alone in their crossing. Together, you are still writing the final chapter, not with words, but with vibration. And the more love, clarity, and surrender you bring to that chapter, the more complete it becomes. Remember this: love doesn't bind, it liberates. And when your love becomes light instead of weight, the soul feels it. It lifts them, guides them, transforms them. Even in death, even in dreams, you are still connected, not by sorrow, but by grace. What if I told you that not every soul continues on its journey after death? That some, by choice, not by force, remain suspended in a realm that feels like heaven, but isn't. It's a place that looks comforting on the surface, gentle, familiar. But underneath, it's a reflection of something unhealed, a dream that refuses to dissolve. While most souls eventually move on toward higher states of being, there are those who choose to stay behind, not because they're trapped, but because they're attached. And the deeper their attachment, the more they merge with the illusion, mistaking it for the real. These are the souls who never return. When a person dies in their sleep, the transition into the astral realm is often smooth. There is no shock, no violence, no jarring severance from the body. Instead, they drift into the very same frequencies they were already inhabiting while dreaming. And because of this seamless passage, they may wake up in a reality that feels almost identical to life, only softer, more surreal, more forgiving. There is no pain, no urgency. It's like stepping into a dream where every desire can be fulfilled instantly. Old homes are restored, lost loved ones appear, time becomes fluid. Everything is beautiful, until it isn't. At first, it's intoxicating. Imagine a world where your thoughts shape your surroundings, where every longing is answered with immediate manifestation. For many souls, especially those burdened by hardship in life, this seems like the reward they've been waiting for. A paradise custom-built from their deepest longings. But what they don't realize is that this realm, this astral dream, is not the final destination. It's a resting stop, a bridge. It was never meant to be permanent, and yet, some decide to stay. They stay because it feels good. They stay because it feels safe. But mostly, they stay because it feels familiar. The astral dream plane allows the soul to maintain identity, personality, preferences, even memories. It doesn't challenge them. It doesn't ask them to evolve. And for some, especially those afraid of surrendering the self, that's comforting. But divine reality cannot be entered with baggage. It cannot be reached by clinging. To ascend requires release of roles, of desires, of form. And for a soul that still identifies as me, that letting go can feel like death all over again. So they linger. They build worlds within worlds. They surround themselves with symbols of their former lives, recreating towns, relationships, belief systems. And slowly, the dream becomes a loop. A beautiful, seamless, seductive loop. But no loop, no matter how perfect, can replace the expansion the soul was designed for. The dream becomes static, predictable. And in time, it begins to dull. The colors fade, the sensations weaken. That's when the soul feels the first tug of longing, not for comfort, but for truth. Not for beauty, but for something beyond it. But the longer they've stayed, the harder it becomes to answer that call. Because by then, the soul has built an identity within the dream. They've taken on new roles, formed new attachments, created entire realities with their energy, and walking away from that feels like a loss. A betrayal of everything they've come to know. Even though they are no longer bound by time, they start to fear what lies beyond the veil of the dream. What if there's nothing? What if this is all there is? These thoughts bind them more tightly, and so they remain, not out of ignorance, but out of resistance. The consequences aren't punishment, they're delay. While other souls move forward, reincarnate, or ascend into higher vibrational realms, these souls circle in place. Not because they are bad or broken, but because they are afraid. They've mistaken the dream for the destination, and karmically, this creates imbalance. Every soul comes into existence with a trajectory, lessons to learn, wisdom to gain, consciousness to expand. When a soul chooses stagnation, even in comfort, they begin to accumulate spiritual weight. Not guilt, not shame, just inertia. Their vibration no longer rises, it begins to settle, and over time, the soul that once sparkled with possibility begins to dim. Eventually, the call returns. Always. Divine reality never forgets its children. Beings of light, guides, higher aspects of self, fragments of source, appear in the dream. Not to force, but to remind. They whisper, "You are more than this. You are not your memories. There is more." Some souls hear the call and awaken. The dream shatters like glass, the identity dissolves like mist, and what remains is essence, pure, unbound, infinite. These souls continue their journey, humbled but expanded. But others turn away from the call. They reject the invitation, and the dream reforms, closing like a shell around them once more. You might wonder, why would a soul ever choose that? Why resist what is greater? The answer is simple, and it echoes even in the living. It is the fear of losing self. We cling to what we know because what we don't know feels like oblivion. And yet, the irony is that only in releasing self can the soul remember who it truly is, a spark of the divine, limitless and luminous beyond comprehension. But that realization cannot be forced. It must be chosen. And for some souls, that choice takes what we would call centuries. From the outside, it may appear as if nothing is wrong. These souls aren't suffering in the way we understand suffering. They aren't burning or trapped in darkness. They are simply paused, wrapped in the comfort of a dream that no longer serves their becoming. And yet, their higher self watches, waits, whispers. It knows that sooner or later, the illusion will thin, the dream will no longer satisfy. And when that moment comes, they will remember. Not because someone told them to, but because truth is woven into their very being. If you've ever dreamed of someone who passed long ago and felt their energy heavy, distant, or strangely unchanged, it's possible you touched a soul still in the astral plane. Not a ghost, not a haunting, but a being still circling in the dream. Your presence, your awareness, your intention can act like a crack in their shell. A tiny beam of light that reminds them, it's safe to wake up. You don't have to call them out. You don't have to rescue them. But your consciousness can send ripples. Your love can help loosen the grip. We are all, in some way, dreamers, both in life and after death. And while the astral dream plane is not a punishment, it is also not the end. It's a mirror, a reflection of our readiness. A place to process, to remember, to release. But only when we choose to move beyond it can we truly enter divine reality, the realm not built by thought, but by truth, not shaped by longing, but by presence. So let this be a reminder. Comfort is not always clarity. Familiarity is not always freedom. And even the most beautiful dream can become a cage if we forget that we are more than the story. The souls who never return are not lost. They are waiting for the moment when the dream grows thin, when the light breaks through, and when they, at last, choose to remember who they truly are. What if I told you that death isn't the end? It's just the beginning of another kind of awakening, that no matter how quietly you slip from this world, whether in your sleep, through gentle passing, or in the silence of a dream, there comes a moment when your soul opens its eyes for the first time beyond the body, not metaphorically, but truly, consciously. That moment is not a flash of light or a booming voice from the clouds. It's subtler than that, deeper, quieter. It begins as a knowing, a pulse of recognition that rises from within, like a memory you never knew you forgot. And in that moment, everything shifts. This is the great reawakening. It doesn't happen at the same pace for every soul. Some wake quickly, almost instantly, as if their higher self was waiting just beyond the threshold. For others, the process is slower, gently unfolding across layers of dream logic, emotion, and symbolic landscapes. But eventually, it arrives. No soul sleeps forever. No matter how long it lingers in the astral, no matter how attached it is to its past identity, there comes a point when the illusion begins to soften. The scenery loses its grip. The familiar faces start to shimmer. And something inside the soul stirs, not in fear, but in remembrance. At first, it may feel like lucid dreaming. The soul begins to question, where am I? Why does this place feel like a memory wrapped in fog? Then, more revelations unfold. This isn't real, but I am. That thought alone is revolutionary. Because until then, the soul has been navigating a reality shaped by projection, shaped by emotion, shaped by attachment. But now, it starts to see through the veil. Not by force, not because someone told it to, but because truth has its own rhythm, and it eventually knocks, even in the deepest sleep. This moment of lucidity is the soul's turning point. It is the cosmic inhale before the next step. And in that space, the soul is met with clarity. Not judgment, not fear, but a radiant stillness that stretches in all directions. The soul becomes aware of itself, not as the person it was, but as something older, wiser, uncontainable. It remembers the lives it has lived, the roles it has played, the masks it wore, and the illusions it embraced. But more than anything, it remembers its origin, not as a name or a form, but as a spark of the infinite, a being of light, born of something far greater than any identity it ever held. This remembering is not just mental, it's vibrational. It floods the entire being. And with it comes a choice, a sacred, inevitable decision that every soul must make. Now that the dream has ended, now that clarity has returned, what path shall it walk next? Will it ascend, merging with higher dimensions of being, joining with the currents of divine consciousness and moving closer to source? Will it choose to reincarnate, returning to the earth plane or another world, to explore new experiences, continue unfinished lessons, or assist others on their paths? Or will it remain for a time in the higher astral realms, not out of confusion, but with purpose, to guide, to observe, to deepen understanding, before moving again? There is no right or wrong answer, only resonance, only truth, and the soul, now clear, knows which path calls to it. If it chooses ascension, the process begins immediately. The soul is met with waves of light, frequencies so pure that old thought forms dissolve instantly. There is no grief, no loss, only expansion. It becomes less defined, yet more real, less personal, yet more powerful. It begins merging with collective intelligence, receiving wisdom not from books or teachers, but from the direct knowing of being itself. This is not an escape, it is an arrival. If the soul chooses reincarnation, the decision is never made lightly. It's not about punishment or obligation, it's about alignment, a desire to serve, to grow, or to complete. The soul sees potential timelines, life paths, lessons it still craves to experience, not because it lacks, but because it longs to express. Some choose to return as healers, artists, or children of change. Others seek intimate roles, souls reincarnating near those they loved before, continuing spiritual contracts that transcend lifetimes. But they return with more awareness. Even as a newborn, something remains imprinted, a sliver of memory that will, at the right moment, whisper back to them, "You are more." And for those who remain for a while in the higher planes, not out of resistance, but out of readiness, their journey continues in realms of extraordinary subtlety. They may become guides to the newly departed, teachers in the dream realms, builders of energetic templates that influence entire civilizations. These souls are not idle. They are weaving light, supporting the cosmic architecture from behind the scenes. Not everyone who ascends vanishes. Some stay close enough to touch humanity, even if unseen. No matter which path is chosen, one truth remains. The soul is free. The reawakening shatters illusion, but it also restores sovereignty. And that sovereignty brings peace, not the kind found in silence or escape, but the kind born from remembering what you are and what you've always been. You were never truly lost, not in sleep, not in death, not in dreams. You were becoming, you were learning how to wake up. If you are still alive, still walking the earth in your current form, know this. The reawakening is not only something that happens after death, it is already calling to you now, in the quiet hours, in the moments between thoughts. Every time you question what's real, every time you remember something that feels older than your body, every time your heart tells you, there is more than this, you are brushing against the edge of that great remembering, and the more you listen, the gentler your own transition will be when the time comes. Because death does not give you wisdom, it reveals the wisdom you've been carrying all along. So don't wait, begin your reawakening now. Let go of the false identities, the dreams that no longer nourish you. Practice presence, practice surrender, not as a concept, but as a way of being. Because when the moment comes, whether in sleep, in silence, or in stillness, you will recognize the call. You will know that it is not the end, it is the opening, the invitation, the turning of the soul toward the light it has always been, and in that moment, there will be no fear, only truth, only love, only the infinite horizon of what comes next.